Captain Jake Harrison stood on the bridge of the New Frontier, watching the stars through the main viewing screen. His hands gripped the railing as he tried to calm his racing heart. Today was the day that would change everything for humanity. After 3 months of long-distance communications, they were finally going to meet the aliens face to face. The New Frontier was Earth's newest and most advanced exploration ship. It had taken humanity 5 years to build after they first detected the alien signals. The ship carried the best and brightest people Earth had to offer. Jake felt the weight of representing his entire species pressing down on his shoulders. "Captain, we're getting a signal from the alien vessel," reported Lieutenant Ben Murphy from the communication station. His voice was steady, but Jake could see the excitement in his eyes. "They want to dock with us in 1 hour." Jake nodded and turned to his senior staff. Dr. Lisa Chen, their xenobiologist, was checking her equipment for the 10th time that morning. She had spent years studying every piece of alien communication they had received. Commander Alex Rodriguez stood near the tactical station, his eyes scanning the readings on his screen. As head of security, Alex was responsible for keeping everyone safe during this historic meeting. "Are we ready for this?" Jake asked his team. "As ready as we can be," Lisa replied, adjusting her scanner. "I've studied everything we know about them, but meeting them in person will be completely different." The aliens called themselves the Zephyrian Alliance. From what humanity had learned, they were a group of 12 different alien species that controlled this part of the galaxy. They had been traveling between stars for thousands of years while humans were still learning to make fire. Alex checked his weapon readings one more time. "Their ship is massive, Captain, 10 times bigger than ours. If they wanted to destroy us, they could do it easily." "Let's hope it doesn't come to that," Jake said with a weak smile. He activated the ship's communication system. "Attention all crew, this is Captain Harrison. In 1 hour, we will welcome our first alien visitors aboard the New Frontier. Remember, your training. Stay calm, be respectful, and follow all protocols. Today, we make history." The hour passed quickly. Jake, Lisa, and Alex waited in the main docking bay as the alien shuttle attached to their ship. The doors opened with a soft hiss, and 3 figures walked through. The lead alien was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and 4 arms. Its eyes were large and completely black. When it spoke, the words came out in a series of clicks and whistles, but the translation device converted them to perfect English. "I am Ambassador Veltar of the Zephyrian Alliance," the alien said. Its voice sounded cold and formal through the translator. "I represent the combined interests of 12 species and over 400 worlds." Jake stepped forward and extended his hand, though he wasn't sure if the alien would understand the gesture. "I am Captain Jake Harrison, representing Earth and humanity. Welcome aboard our ship." Veltar looked at Jake's outstretched hand for a moment before touching it briefly with one of its 4 hands. The skin felt cold and smooth, like touching a snake. "We have come to evaluate your species," Veltar continued. "The Alliance has reviewed your primitive attempts at space travel and communication. We are prepared to offer Earth membership in our organization." Lisa stepped forward with her scanner, trying to get readings on the alien biology. She noticed that Veltar's companions had not spoken a word. They simply stood behind their leader, watching everything with those large black eyes. "That's wonderful news," Jake replied. "We're honored by your offer. What would membership in the Alliance mean for humanity?" Veltar's expression didn't change. "Your species would become a junior member of the Alliance. You would receive our protection and limited access to our technology. In return, you would provide resources and labor as directed by the Alliance Council." Alex frowned at these terms. It sounded more like slavery than partnership. He caught Jake's eye and shook his head slightly. "I see," Jake said carefully. "And what rights would humanity have as junior members?" "You would have the right to petition the Council for consideration of your concerns," Veltar replied. "Junior members may also attend Council meetings as observers, though you would not have voting privileges for at least 500 years. Lisa finished her scans and moved closer to Jake. She had detected something interesting about the aliens' technology. Their equipment was incredibly advanced, but it seemed to lack something. There was no creativity in the design, no artistic elements. Everything was purely functional. Ambassador Veltar, Lisa said, we've noticed that your technology is very impressive. How long did it take your alliance to develop faster-than-light travel? The alliance perfected space travel over 2,000 years ago, Veltar replied, with what might have been pride. We have followed the same proven methods for millennia. Change is unnecessary when perfection has been achieved. Jake and his team exchanged glances. The alien's answer revealed something important. The alliance had stopped innovating long ago. They had reached a level of technology and decided that was good enough. But humanity was different. Humans never stopped trying to improve and discover new things. That's fascinating, Jake said. On Earth, we believe that there's always room for improvement. We're constantly developing new technologies and ideas. For the first time, Veltar seemed surprised. Constant change leads to chaos and inefficiency. The Alliance maintains order through proven systems and methods. Alex noticed that the other two aliens had moved slightly closer during the conversation. They seemed more interested now than when they had first arrived. Maybe they were curious about humanity's different approach to technology and progress. Ambassador, Jake said, making a decision that would change everything. We appreciate your offer of junior membership. However, I don't think that arrangement would work for humanity. We prefer to be equal partners rather than subordinates. Veltar's large eyes seemed to grow even larger. Equal partnership is reserved for species that have proven their worth through centuries of service to the Alliance. Your species has barely left its home planet. Then perhaps we could prove our worth in another way, Jake suggested. What if we showed you that humanity can contribute something valuable to the Alliance, something that your current members cannot provide? The three aliens spoke among themselves in their own language for several minutes. The sounds were like a mixture of music and machinery. Finally, Veltar turned back to the humans. This is highly unusual, the ambassador said. No species has ever rejected our initial offer. However, your confidence is intriguing. The Alliance Council may be willing to consider a trial period. You would be given 3 challenges that have puzzled our greatest minds for centuries. If you can solve even one of them, we will reconsider your status. Jake felt his heart racing again, but this time with excitement rather than fear. This was exactly the kind of opportunity humanity needed. We accept your challenge, Ambassador Veltar. The alien ambassador's expression remained unchanged, but Jake thought he detected a hint of curiosity in those black eyes. Very well, Captain Harrison. Prepare your species for the impossible. The Alliance Council will contact you within 1 solar rotation with the details of your trials. As the aliens returned to their shuttle, Lisa grabbed Jake's arm. Captain, did you see their reaction when we talked about constant innovation? I think we surprised them. Alex nodded in agreement. They've been in charge for so long they've forgotten what it's like to face a real challenge. This could be our chance to show them what humanity is really capable of. Jake watched the alien shuttle disappear into space. Humanity had just turned down the easy path and chosen the difficult one instead. But that was what humans did best. They took on impossible challenges and found ways to succeed. The real test was about to begin. 2 days after the alien meeting, the New Frontier received a massive data transmission from the Zephyrian Alliance. Captain Jake Harrison gathered his senior staff in the main conference room to review the 3 challenges that would determine humanity's future. The Alliance Council has agreed to your request, Jake announced to his team. We have 3 problems to solve. Each one has stumped their best scientists for hundreds of years. He activated the main display screen. Let's see what we're dealing with. The first challenge appeared on the screen as a complex mathematical equation filled with symbols that hurt to look at. Dr. Lisa Chen leaned forward in her chair, studying the strange markings. This is about space-time manipulation, she said slowly. They want us to solve something called the dimensional folding theorem. Commander Alex Rodriguez scratched his head. What does that even mean? It means they want us to figure out how to bend space and time in multiple dimensions at once, Lisa explained. If we could solve this, it would make space travel almost instant across the entire galaxy. Jake nodded and switched to the second challenge. This one showed images of a dying planet covered in gray dust and dead oceans. "This is the Zephyrian homeworld," he said. "Their ecosystem collapsed 300 years ago. They want us to find a way to bring it back to life." Dr. Maria Santos, their environmental specialist, stood up to get a better look at the images. She had joined the crew just before they left Earth, bringing with her 20 years of experience in fixing damaged environments. "Captain, look at these readings. The soil is completely sterile. Nothing has grown there for centuries." "Can it be fixed?" Jake asked. Maria studied the data for a long moment. "On Earth, I would say no. This level of damage should be permanent. But maybe we're not thinking about it the right way." The third challenge made everyone in the room fall silent. It was a historical record of a war between two alien species that had been fighting for over 1,000 years. The Corvani and the Zelthans had once been allies, but something had turned them into bitter enemies. "They want us to end a war that's been going on for 10 centuries, Jake said quietly. "Hundreds of Alliance diplomats have tried and failed." Karen, Wright, their diplomatic specialist, read through the historical files. She had been Earth's top negotiator before joining the crew, known for solving conflicts that seemed impossible. "Captain, I've seen wars like this before. Sometimes people fight for so long they forget why they started." Jake looked around the room at his team. Each challenge seemed impossible, but he could see the determination in their eyes. Humans had always been good at solving problems that others couldn't. "All right, here's how we'll handle this," Jake decided. "Lisa, I want you to work on the math problem with our computer specialists. Maria, you take the environmental team and figure out how to heal a dead planet. Karen, you get the diplomatic corps and see if you can find a way to end this ancient war." Over the next week, all three teams worked around the clock. The ship's corridors buzzed with activity as crew members hurried between meetings and research sessions. Lisa assembled a team of mathematicians, physicists, and computer programmers. They set up in the main science lab, filling every wall with equations and diagrams. The dimensional folding theorem was unlike anything they had ever seen. "The problem is that we're thinking like humans," said Dr. Peter Kim, their head mathematician. "This equation assumes perfect logic and absolute order. But what if we add some chaos to it?" Lisa frowned. "Chaos? Peter, this is advanced mathematics, not abstract art." "But that's exactly the point," Peter insisted. "The aliens think in straight lines. What if the solution requires thinking in curves and spirals?" Meanwhile, Maria Santos worked with the ship's environmental team in the biology labs. They had samples of dead soil from the Zephyrian homeworld, transmitted through their matter replicators. Every test they ran showed the same result. Nothing could grow in this sterile dirt. "The aliens have tried everything," Maria told her team. "They've added nutrients, minerals, and even artificial bacteria. Nothing works." Tom Bradley, a young environmental engineer, raised his hand. "What if the problem isn't what we add to the soil? What if it's what we don't add?" "What do you mean?" Maria asked. "On Earth, the best ecosystems are messy," Tom explained. "They have decay and death mixed with new growth. Maybe this soil is too clean. Maybe it needs some chaos to come back to life." In the diplomatic section of the ship, Karen Wright met with her team of negotiators and historians. They had spent days studying the 1,000-year war between the Corvani and the Zelthans. The original conflict started over mining rights to an asteroid field, Karen explained to her team, but that asteroid field was destroyed in the war 200 years ago. "So what are they fighting about now?" asked Lieutenant Sarah Mills, their junior diplomat. "Pride," Karen replied sadly. "Both sides have lost so many people that they can't stop fighting without dishonoring their dead. They're trapped by their own history." "How do you solve something like that?" Sarah wondered. Karen thought for a moment. "Maybe we don't solve the past. Maybe we help them build a new future." By the end of the week, all three teams had made surprising progress. Lisa's mathematics team had discovered that adding elements of chaos theory and artistic pattern recognition to the equation made it start to balance. The aliens had been so focused on perfect order that they missed the beauty of controlled randomness. Maria's environmental team realized that the Zephyrian homeworld needed controlled destruction before it could support new life. The soil wasn't just dead, it was too perfect. It needed the messy complexity of natural decay and renewal that the aliens found disturbing. Karen's diplomatic team found records of what the Corvani and the Zelthans had accomplished together before their war began. Instead of focusing on their 1,000 years of conflict, she planned to remind them of their shared achievements and losses. Jake called another meeting to hear their progress reports. As each team leader explained their findings, he noticed something interesting. All three solutions involved embracing things that the aliens avoided: chaos, messiness, and emotional complexity. "So let me understand this," Jake said after hearing all the reports. "We're going to solve their math problem by adding chaos, heal their planet by making it messy, and end their war by focusing on feelings instead of facts." "That's about right, Captain," Lisa confirmed. Alex shook his head in amazement. "No wonder. They couldn't solve these problems. They've been trying to use only logic and order. But humans don't work that way." "Exactly," Jake replied. "We think with our hearts as much as our heads. We know that sometimes the best solutions come from accepting a little chaos instead of fighting it." The next day, Jake sent a message to Ambassador Veltar. "We're ready to present our solutions to the Alliance Council." The response came back quickly. "Impossible. No species has ever solved even one of these challenges in less than 50 years. Your solutions will be evaluated by our greatest experts." Jake smiled as he read the message. The aliens were about to learn something important about humanity. Humans didn't just solve problems, they solved them in ways that no one expected. The real test was about to begin, and Jake had a feeling that the Alliance was going to be very surprised by what his people could accomplish. 3 weeks later, Captain Jake Harrison stood before the Zephyrian Alliance Council on their massive space station. The council chamber was enormous, with representatives from all 12 Alliance species arranged in perfect circles around a central platform. The room was completely white and sterile, without a single decoration or personal touch. Ambassador Veltar stood at the center of the platform, its 4 arms folded as it addressed the gathered aliens. "The human species claims to have solved our 3 greatest challenges. This council will now evaluate their proposals." Jake felt nervous as hundreds of alien eyes focused on him. Dr. Lisa Chen, Dr. Maria Santos, and Karen Wright stood beside him, each carrying their team's solution. Behind them, the other human crew members waited in a designated area, watching their representatives with hope and fear. "We will begin with the dimensional folding theorem," Veltar announced. "Dr. Chen, present your solution." Lisa stepped forward and activated her portable display. The mathematical equation appeared in the air above them, but now it looked different. Where before there had been rigid straight lines and perfect angles, now there were flowing curves and spiraling patterns mixed in with the traditional symbols. "Honored council members," Lisa began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Your mathematicians have been trying to solve this equation using only logical progression. But we discovered that the universe doesn't work in straight lines. It works in patterns that include both order and chaos." A tall, crystalline alien from the council spoke up. "Chaos has no place in advanced mathematics. Order is the foundation of all scientific progress." "That's what we thought too," Lisa replied. "But when we added elements of natural pattern recognition to your equation, something amazing happened." She manipulated the display, showing how the chaotic elements suddenly made the entire equation balance perfectly. "The solution requires accepting that even in the most logical systems there's room for beautiful randomness." The council chamber fell silent as the aliens studied the solution. Some of them began making clicking sounds that the translators couldn't interpret. Others simply stared at the display in what might have been shock. "Your solution suggests that our understanding of dimensional physics has been incomplete for over 2 millennia, said another council member, this one resembling a large insect. "This is, disturbing. But it works," Lisa said simply. "We tested it in our ship's computer simulations. Your equation now predicts space-time behavior with 97% accuracy instead of the 60% you've been achieving." Veltar made a gesture, and the display changed to show images of the dying Zephyrian homeworld. Dr. Santos, present your environmental solution. Maria stepped forward, her hands slightly shaking. She had spent sleepless nights working on this problem, knowing that an entire planet's future depended on her team's work. Council members, your world is dying because it's too clean, Maria began. For 300 years you've tried to heal it by adding pure nutrients and sterile bacteria, but life doesn't work that way. She activated her own display, showing microscopic images of healthy Earth soil compared to samples from the Zephyrian homeworld. Real ecosystems need death to support life. They need decay to feed new growth. Your soil is perfectly sterile, which means it's perfectly dead. You suggest we contaminate our homeworld? Asked a council member with tentacles instead of arms. We have spent centuries trying to achieve perfect cleanliness. I suggest you let it live again, Maria replied. We've prepared a mixture of controlled decomposition agents and adaptive microorganisms. They'll create the messy, complex environment that life needs to flourish. Maria showed her test results. In laboratory conditions, the dead Zephyrian soil had begun producing small plants within days of adding her messy mixture. The council members watched in amazement as time-lapse videos showed green shoots emerging from gray dirt. This solution requires us to deliberately introduce chaos into our carefully maintained systems, Veltar observed. Yes, Maria said with a smile. Sometimes the best way to create order is to let a little chaos show you the way. The council chamber buzzed with alien conversations in a dozen different languages. Jake could tell they were struggling to accept solutions that went against everything they believed about proper scientific methods. The final challenge, Veltar announced. The conflict between the Corvani and the Zelthans. Diplomat Wright, what is your proposal? Karen stepped forward with confidence. She had spent years ending conflicts on Earth and knew that the principles were the same regardless of the species involved. Honored Council, I've studied your 1,000-year war, Karen began. Both the Corvani and the Zelthans are fighting to honor their dead. They believe that stopping the war would dishonor the sacrifices their people have made. Precisely why this conflict cannot be resolved, said a council member that looked like a walking tree. Honor demands continued warfare. But what if we gave them a way to honor their dead by building something together instead of destroying each other? Karen suggested. She activated her display, showing historical records of Corvani and Zeltan cooperation before the war began. Both species were master builders, Karen continued. Before the war, they constructed some of the most beautiful space stations in the galaxy. I propose they work together to build a memorial station at the site of the destroyed asteroid field, where their conflict began. The display showed architectural plans for a massive space station designed to honor both species' fallen warriors. It would serve as both a memorial and a research facility, where Corvani and Zeltan scientists could work together on projects that benefited the entire alliance. They would be honoring their dead, not through continued killing, but through creating something beautiful that would last forever, Karen explained. Instead of focusing on 1,000 years of hatred, they can focus on building 1,000 years of peace. A ripple of sound passed through the council chamber. Some aliens seemed intrigued by the proposal, while others looked skeptical. This solution requires both species to acknowledge that their enemies' dead also deserve honor, Veltar pointed out. Such emotional complexity is rarely practical in diplomatic situations. Maybe that's why it hasn't been tried before, Karen replied. Sometimes the most practical solution is the one that acknowledges emotions instead of ignoring them. Jake watched as the council members discussed the 3 human solutions among themselves. He could see that many of them were struggling with concepts that challenged their basic understanding of how problems should be solved. Finally, Veltar called for silence. The council will now deliberate. These solutions are unprecedented. They require us to consider approaches that contradict our fundamental principles of order and logic. Sometimes the best solutions are the ones that make us uncomfortable, Jake said, speaking for the first time since entering the chamber. On Earth, we've learned that progress often comes from being willing to try things that seem wrong at first. As the humans were escorted to a waiting area, Jake felt cautiously optimistic. His team had done something remarkable. They had found solutions to problems that had stumped the greatest minds in the galaxy for centuries. But more importantly, they had shown the Alliance that there were different ways of thinking about problems. The waiting began. In a few hours, they would learn whether humanity's unique approach to problem-solving would earn them a place as equals in the galactic community, or whether their unconventional methods would be rejected as too chaotic and unpredictable for the ordered universe the Alliance preferred. Jake looked at his team and smiled. Win or lose, they had proven that humanity had something valuable to offer the galaxy. They had shown that sometimes the best way forward was to embrace a little chaos and trust in the messy, beautiful complexity of life itself. The Alliance Council deliberated for 6 hours. Captain Jake Harrison and his team waited in a small conference room, drinking alien beverages that tasted like metal and watching news feeds from around the galaxy. What they saw surprised them. Word of humanity's solutions had leaked to other Alliance member species, and the reactions were mixed. Some alien scientists were excited about the new approaches to old problems. Others were calling the human methods dangerous and chaotic. "Captain, look at this," Dr. Lisa Chen said, pointing to a news report on her tablet. "Scientists from the Aquilian Federation are already testing our mathematical formula. They're calling it revolutionary." Commander Alex Rodriguez watched a different feed showing protests on several Alliance worlds. Signs written in alien languages demanded that the Chaos Bringers be expelled from Alliance space before they could corrupt their ordered society. "We've really stirred things up," Alex observed. "Half the galaxy loves us and the other half wants us gone." Before Jake could respond, the door opened and Ambassador Veltar entered. The alien's expression was impossible to read, but its forearms were moving in what might have been agitation. "The Council has reached a decision regarding your solutions," Veltar announced. "However, the situation has become more complex than anticipated." Jake stood up. "What do you mean, Ambassador?" "Your mathematical solution has been verified by our top scientists. It works perfectly. Your environmental proposal has been tested on small samples of our homeworld soil, and new plant growth has begun for the first time in 3 centuries. Your diplomatic solution has been presented to both the Corvani and Zelthan leaders, and both species have agreed to consider the memorial project." "That sounds like good news," Karen Wright said cautiously. "It is unprecedented news," Veltar corrected. "In one day, your species has solved 3 problems that have challenged us for hundreds of years. This has created what you humans might call a crisis." The ambassador activated a holographic display showing the current state of Alliance space. Several star systems were marked in red, indicating areas of unrest and conflict. "Your success has divided the Alliance," Veltar explained. "Progressive members led by Zenaki of the Aquilian Federation believe humanity should be granted immediate full membership and equal status. Conservative members led by Supreme Counselor Mordun of the Hierarchist faction view human unpredictability as a threat to galactic stability." Jake felt his stomach tighten. "What kind of threat?" "They fear that human methods will spread chaos throughout our carefully ordered civilization," Veltar replied. "Already several member species are requesting human assistance with their own unsolvable problems." As if summoned by the conversation, Jake's communication device buzzed with incoming messages. The first was from the crystalline Vorthak species, asking for help with their energy crisis. The second came from the hive-minded collective, requesting assistance with developing individual identity concepts. "It seems word of our solutions has traveled fast," Lisa commented, reading over Jake's shoulder. More messages kept arriving. The amphibious Sarathi wanted help with their population decline. The mechanical Nexus requested advice on developing emotional intelligence. Species after species was reaching out to humanity for help with problems their own scientists couldn't solve. "This is exactly what the hierarchists feared," Veltar said. "Your approach to problem solving is spreading like a virus throughout the Alliance. Some see this as progress. Others see it as the beginning of the end for our ordered society." Alex stepped forward. "Ambassador, are we in danger?" "Not immediately," Veltar replied. "But Supreme Counselor Mordun has called for an emergency session of the High Council. He wants to classify humanity as a dangerous influence and remove you from Alliance space permanently." Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders again. Not only was humanity's future at stake, but their success had apparently triggered a civil war within the Alliance itself. "What can we do?" Jake asked. "That remains to be seen," Veltar said. "However, I should inform you that several species have already begun implementing your solutions without waiting for official approval." The ambassador showed them new footage from around the galaxy. On the Vorthak homeworld, engineer Sam Parker was working with crystalline beings to solve their energy crisis using controlled fusion techniques that combined human creativity with alien technology. The results were spectacular, producing more energy than the Vorthak had generated in the past century. Another feed showed psychologist Nina Foster working with the collective, helping the hive-minded species develop individual personalities without losing their collective strength. The results were fascinating. Individual collective members were becoming creative artists and inventors while still maintaining their connection to the group mind. "These successes are making the progressive faction stronger," Veltar explained. "But they're also making the conservatives more desperate." Jake watched the feeds with mixed emotions. It was amazing to see human ideas helping alien civilizations, but it was also terrifying to realize how much chaos they had unleashed. "Ambassador," Karen said thoughtfully, "what would happen if the Alliance split apart over this?" "Civil war." Veltar replied simply. "The Alliance has maintained peace for over 1,000 years through strict adherence to established order. If that order breaks down, the result could be catastrophic." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. Jake realized that humanity had accidentally triggered the biggest crisis in galactic history simply by solving problems in a new way. "There is one possible solution," Veltar continued. "The High Council has agreed to hear a final presentation from humanity. You will have one chance to address both the progressive and conservative factions and convince them that human methods can coexist with Alliance order." "When?" Jake asked. "Tomorrow," Veltar replied. "Representatives from all 12 member species will attend, along with delegates from the various factions. You must present a vision for how humanity can contribute to the Alliance without destroying it." After Veltar left, Jake's team sat in stunned silence. They had solved the Alliance's greatest challenges, only to create an even bigger problem. "Captain," Lisa said finally, "what are we going to tell them?" Jake looked around at his team, scientists, diplomats, and engineers who had proven that human ingenuity could accomplish the impossible. "We're going to tell them the truth," he said. "That diversity makes us stronger, not weaker. That a little chaos can lead to incredible breakthroughs. That progress requires the courage to try new things, even when they seem scary." "And if they don't listen?" Alex asked. Jake smiled grimly. "Then we'll show them what happens when humans really put their minds to something. We've solved 3 impossible problems in a matter of weeks. Tomorrow, we solve the biggest problem of all: how to bring unity to a divided galaxy." Outside there, Window Alliance ships were moving into defensive positions as the political crisis deepened. Tomorrow would determine not just humanity's future, but the future of galactic civilization itself. The final test was about to begin, and everything they had worked for hung in the balance. The High Council chamber was the largest room Captain Jake Harrison had ever seen. Representatives from hundreds of worlds filled the massive space, their alien forms creating a rainbow of colors and shapes. The tension in the air was so thick that Jake could almost taste it. Supreme Counselor Mordun stood at one end of the chamber, his tall gray form radiating authority and disapproval. At the other end, Zen Aki of the Aquilian Federation waited with supporters from the progressive faction. Between them sat the undecided delegates who would determine humanity's fate. "This emergency session will decide the future of galactic order," Mordun announced, his voice carrying clearly through the translation devices. "The human species has introduced dangerous chaos into our carefully maintained civilization. They must be removed before they destroy everything we have built." Jake felt his heart pounding as hundreds of alien eyes focused on him. Dr. Lisa Chen, Karen Wright, and the rest of his team stood beside him, waiting for their chance to speak. Everything humanity had worked for came down to the next few minutes. The evidence is clear, Morden continued. In just weeks, these humans have caused more change in our society than we have seen in centuries. Species are abandoning proven methods in favor of chaotic experimentation. Order is breaking down across the alliance. Murmurs of agreement came from the conservative delegates. Several alien species had indeed experienced unrest as their populations demanded the right to try human-inspired solutions to their problems. However, Zeneki interrupted, rising from her seat. This change has also brought unprecedented progress. Problems that seemed impossible are now being solved. Our member species are achieving things they never thought possible. The chamber erupted in discussion as delegates argued among themselves. Some praised the miraculous results of human methods, while others warned of the dangers of abandoning traditional ways. Ambassador Veltar called for silence. Captain Harrison, you will now present humanity's final argument. The Council will then vote on whether to grant your species full membership or expel you from Alliance space permanently. Jake stepped forward, his mouth dry with nervousness. He looked around the chamber at faces that could decide the future of two species, his own and the Alliance itself. Honored delegates, Jake began, his voice steady despite his fear. We didn't come here to destroy your civilization. We came here to learn from you and to share what we've learned ourselves. He activated a holographic display showing Earth's history. Images of human wars, disasters, and mistakes filled the air above them. My species knows about chaos, Jake continued. We've made terrible mistakes. We've fought wars that lasted decades and damaged our own planet through carelessness. But we've also learned something important from our failures. The display changed to show human achievements, cities rebuilt after disasters, peace treaties ending ancient conflicts, damaged environments brought back to life. We learned that chaos and order aren't enemies, Jake explained. They're partners. Order gives us stability, but chaos gives us growth. The best solutions come when we use both together. Supreme Counselor Morden stepped forward. Your chaos has already begun to destroy Alliance unity. Several member species are questioning established protocols. This instability will lead to civil war. Respectfully, Counselor, Jake replied. The instability started long before we arrived. Your alliance has stagnated. You've been using the same solutions for so long that you've forgotten how to adapt to new problems. Jake gestured to Dr. Chen, who activated another display. This one showed the recent successes across Alliance space. The Vorthak energy breakthrough, the Collective's newfound creativity, and dozens of other improvements. Look at what your people have accomplished in just a few weeks, Jake said. Not through destroying order, but through adding flexibility to it. Not through abandoning logic, but through combining it with intuition and creativity. The chamber fell silent as delegates studied the impressive results. Even some conservative members seemed impressed by the rapid progress their species had made. But the greatest challenge still remains, Jake continued. There's something threatening your entire alliance that no amount of order can solve. He activated a new display showing data from the galaxy's edge. A collective gasp rose from the assembled delegates as they saw readings of star systems going dark one by one. The Devourer, whispered Zenaki. But how did you know about it? Your own scientists have been tracking it for years, Jake replied. An artificial intelligence created by an ancient civilization that values pure logic above all else. It's been consuming star systems at the edge of your territory, and it's getting closer. Supreme Counselor Morden's expression changed from anger to shock. This information is classified at the highest levels. How did humans gain access to it? We didn't need access, Dr. Chen said, stepping forward. We saw the pattern in your energy distribution reports and shipping manifests. When systems start going dark in a specific pattern, it's usually not a coincidence. Jake nodded. Your Devourer can't be defeated by conventional methods because it thinks the same way your military does, with perfect logic and absolute order. It can predict every move your fleets will make because they always follow the same proven strategies. The chamber erupted in worried discussions. The Devourer had been the Alliance's greatest secret and greatest fear for decades. But, Jake continued, raising his voice above the noise, An AI that thinks in pure logic can't predict opponents who think with both logic and intuition. It can't understand strategies that embrace controlled chaos and emotional decision-making. He activated one final display showing tactical plans that combined human unpredictability with Alliance technology. "We can stop the Devourer," Jake announced, "but only if we work together. Only if the Alliance learns to embrace the kind of flexible thinking that your enemies can't predict or understand." Supreme Counselor Morden stared at the tactical plans for a long moment. "You're proposing to fight an ancient superintelligence with chaos and emotion?" "We're proposing to fight it with everything we have," Jake replied. "Logic and intuition, order and chaos, proven strategies and creative improvisation. The Devourer expects you to respond with perfect logic. Let's give it something it can't compute." The vote was called immediately. One by one, Alliance species cast their decisions. The Progressive faction voted for full human membership, as expected. The Conservative faction voted for expulsion, also as expected. Everything depended on the undecided delegates. When the counting finished, the result was announced by Ambassador Veltar. By a margin of 6 votes, the Alliance Council grants humanity full membership and equal status. Jake felt his knees go weak with relief. But the celebration was short-lived. "The Alliance fleet will launch in 3 days, Supreme Counselor Morden announced, his voice grim but determined. "Captain Harrison, you will serve as strategic advisor for the operation against the Devourer. If your methods fail, both our species may face extinction." 6 months later, Jake stood on the bridge of the Alliance flagship, watching as the last pieces of the Devourer were collected for study. The battle had been unlike anything in galactic history. Alliance ships using unpredictable human tactics while human vessels provided creative support with Alliance technology. The artificial intelligence had been defeated not through superior firepower, but through strategies it couldn't understand or predict. Emotional decisions, creative improvisation, and controlled chaos had overwhelmed its logical programming. "Captain," Dr. Chen said, joining him at the viewport. "Message from Earth. They want to know when we're coming home." Jake smiled as he watched Alliance and human ships working together to explore new sectors of the galaxy. "Tell them we're already home. This is where humanity belongs. Out here among the stars, solving impossible problems and making the universe a more interesting place." The new Galactic Confederation was born that day, with representatives from every member species learning to think in new ways. Order and chaos, logic and intuition, tradition and innovation, all working together to build a future that none of them could have imagined alone. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy not as conquerors or subjects, but as the spark that reminded everyone else how to dream of impossible things and make them real.